So it's Friday, so it's time for Poets. Some of us know that as Push Off Early, tomorrow's Saturday, but in this context it's the Perioperative Enhancement Team. Inspired by Dr. Sol Aronson and the team at Duke, a selection of clips to get us thinking about the next steps in providing world-class perioperative care. You'll find the full lectures in our back catalogue, or join us at the upcoming Perioperative Practicum for expert discussions, business case tips and hands-on workshops. Go to www.ebpom.org and look for our international programme of perioperative practicums. Top Bed Talk.
This piece is presented by Chloe Grimmett, behavioural scientist from Southampton University. She works closely alongside the Fit for Surgery team, providing the behavioural intervention, which is part of the ongoing WestFit prehabilitation trial.
Okay, so what about behaviour change? So I'm a behavioural scientist. This is the stuff that I'm particularly interested in. We know that while these prehab exercise trials that have been conducted so far, they've been almost exclusively in hospital-based settings. So it's highly supervised in a hospital over a given period of time. And we know that despite the fact that there's really encouraging evidence there, we know that that's not sustainable in the NHS. We need some kind of alternative method for delivering these interventions, be it in the community or as a home-based trial. Now, acknowledging that, the Fit for Surgery team came up with this trial where they looked to start patients with a prehab exercise program in hospital and then transitioning them into a home-based setting. So they start off in hospital and then they're given a program to do when they're back at home. Now, the adherence rates for that went from 96% when they were in hospital and supervised to 8% when they went home, which was obviously a bit disappointing for the team, I'm sure. And also it's a case of, well, we know the patients are motivated. They're doing it in hospital. We've seen the qualitative evidence that they really feel the benefit of what's going on. So why the drop-off? So while the team at Southampton were scratching their heads about this, Sandy, Jack and I had a chance meeting at the hospital at Southampton where we were both presenting our work, and we started to talk a bit about how we might include behavioural science into some of the future studies. So, as I said, my background has been in developing interventions for cancer survivors. So I've been, up until now, very much involved in patients after they finished their treatment. And there's been a lot of research in this area over the last 10 years. So we have some pretty solid evidence now that we can develop interventions in all sorts of settings which are effective in changing patient behaviour to increase their exercise once their treatments have completed. So we've got evidence for home-based settings, web-based interventions, individual peer support. They can all work. And there's been some fairly recent systematic reviews that have showed some pretty decent effect sizes in affecting short and medium-term physical activity behaviour. And importantly, the interventions that had some kind of theoretical underpinning, so that were informed by behavioural science, seemed to do best. And what we saw in that trial where the patients were trying to go from this supervised exercise setting to the home-based setting, they left with a spring in their step. They left wanting to exercise at home. So they had the intention to do that, but it didn't happen. They didn't manage to do the exercise independently. And we've all been there. We've all seen in our own lives this intention to behaviour gap. So we intend to do something, we're really motivated, we know it's a good idea, but something gets in the way and the behaviour doesn't happen. And this is where the behavioural science can come in to try and understand that gap and bridge that gap. So in early 2016, the team at Southampton, led by Sandy Jack, secured a £1.6 million NHS England service transformation bid. And this gave them the opportunity to develop a 4-armed RCT to embed within a service transformation. So there's 4 arms to the trial. There's the control group or the standard care. Group 2, they receive exercise alone, but this is in a community setting, so this is in local community gyms. Group 3 receive psychological support, and that comes from Wessex Cancer Trust wellbeing centres. And then Group 4 receive both exercise and psychological support. And my job was to find a behavioural intervention that we could embed within the exercise elements of that trial to try and support patients to maintain the exercise when they're in this community setting, and also to hopefully give them the impetus to exercise after the trial has finished, in as much as the supervised exercise element has finished. So it needed something that was pragmatic. We needed something that didn't involve a huge amount of training for the people delivering it, and we needed something that wasn't overly burdensome on the patients. Now, I don't know how many of you have come across the Making Every Contact Count initiative. Has anyone heard of that? Yeah, quite a few of you. So this was the brainchild, if you like, of Public Health England, NHS England and Health Education England, and it was their effort really to try and address this public health crisis we have of people having poor lifestyle habits. They developed, or an intervention was developed to support health professionals across the board, anyone who's interacting with patients or clients, to try and use those encounters as effectively as possible to try and promote behaviour change. Now, the crux of that intervention is something called healthy conversation skills, and that was developed by someone called Professor Wendy Lawrence, who also happens to be at Southampton in the MRC unit. And they developed this intervention that draws on behavioural science. So it draws on motivational interviewing, which some of you might have heard of, but most of all it draws on Bandura's social cognitive theory, which is essentially this notion of self-efficacy. That's the real core component of it. So if you can increase people's confidence and give them a real sense of autonomy over what they're doing, then you might have a better chance of them doing it. And this is really shifting the balance from being given an exercise program and told what to do, how to do it, and when to do it, to asking the patients what they want to do and how they want to do it, and to make sure they think about any barriers that might come up. So it's really about fostering this sense of empowerment and doing that through problem-solving, self-directed, graded goals and action planning, which in plain English basically means the person becomes a facilitator, talks to the patients about what they want to do, what are their goals. So it might be that someone just wants to get fit enough to get back to playing with their grandchildren or getting back to cycling, whatever it is that they want to be doing. That's their ultimate motivator. It has to be relevant to them in their day-to-day life. And they have to think about how they're going to go about doing that and think about what they're going to do if things get in the way. So the person delivering this training is asking a lot of questions and doing a lot of listening and doing very little directing. So it's all about encouraging the patients to find their own way. So the training itself is delivered in 2 half days, spread over a couple of weeks usually in a group setting. And these are the 4 key components of the training. So as I said, it's about asking open discovery questions, the how and what. So what do you want to do? How are you going to do it? What are you going to do when this happens? How are you going to deal with that? Doing a lot of listening, more than talking, and the people delivering the intervention are encouraged to reflect on the practices. So think about how it went, think about how the conversation evolved, how might they improve things moving forward. And it's really about supporting this goal setting. I'm sure you've all heard about SMART goals. It's about them being realistic, achievable, so that patients can start making small improvements and working towards these bigger goals. So in the context of Westfit, this has meant that the personal trainers who are delivering the exercise trial in the community setting are being trained in healthy conversations. So while they're having these one-to-one sessions, and there might be 2 patients exercising at a time, while they're doing that supervised element, they're trying to encourage patients to think about these things, think about how they're going to exercise on their own, think about what they're going to do after surgery and how they're going to achieve it. They might do some signposting as well to things that are available in the community, and they'll make sure that whatever the patient is planning on doing, it's safe and sensible as well within the context of what's going on. So in terms of the outcomes for the Westfit trial, just to give you a sense of those, so the primary outcome is hospital length of stay. Now, that wouldn't be the chosen outcome were it Sandy's choice, but this is a service transformation fund, ultimately, and the bottom line for commissioners is hospital length of stay, so that's the primary outcome. And there's a number of secondary outcomes as well. So one of the ones I'm particularly interested in is physical activity, so we're giving people actigraphs to wear to measure their physical activity in the months after the trial, and also patient activation measures. Some of you might have come across the PAM, the patient activation measure, which is just another way of looking at this confidence to self-manage as time goes on. Just one more thing. In the way that the Westfit trial was developed, while we were trying to iron out what the intervention was going to look like, myself and some colleagues ran some focus groups with some patients who'd already been involved in some of the trials at Southampton. And we asked them about their experience and asked for their advice on how we might change how things have been delivered in the past to make them even better, essentially. One of the really key things, and in fact I think everybody that we spoke to talked about this, was having support after surgery. So a lot of them got frustrated in that they really felt their fitness improve, they really appreciated the benefits it gave them in terms of their recovery after the operation, but they didn't know what to do afterwards. They didn't know what was safe, they didn't know how to manage the fact that they'd had major surgery, what they can do, how they can avoid hernias. And so they really didn't know how to get back to exercising, even though a number of them wanted to. So one of the things we've included in Westfit is to make sure that all the patients have the opportunity to speak to their trainer around about week 12 or when they're medically fit to talk about any concerns they've had, what the plans are, and give them some confidence really that what they're doing is safe.
Thanks for downloading and listening to Top Med Talk. Don't forget to find us on social media. We're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, even got our own YouTube channel. Whichever your favourite social media feed is, we're bound to be there. Find us. Also, subscribe to this podcast so that you never miss an episode. And make sure you go to the Top Med Talk website, topmedtalk.com, and get on board with the email updates. Oh, whilst you're at it as well, I suggest you download our entire back catalogue. We're categorising it at the moment. We're having a little look through it. It may not always be in the form that you currently find it. So if you get your hard drive ready for a full-on download via the website perhaps, or perhaps through your podcatcher. Oh, and if you fancy meeting us, why not go to the website edpom.org/meetings. Our next big event is EdPom USA, the Dallas Masters Course, a perioperative care practicum. Have a look for details of that and some of the other meetings coming up across the next year. edpom.org/meetings.